I was standing in my kitchen, rinsing a coffee mug, when my phone vibrated on the counter. I didn't rush to pick it up. I had learned that whenever my daughter called, it was never just to say hello. When I finally looked at the screen and saw her name, I felt that familiar tightening in my chest, the one that always came before disappointment. I answered anyway because hope dies slowly. "Mom, did you cancel the transfer?" she asked immediately, without greeting, without warmth. "Yes," I said quietly. "I did." There was a short pause and then her voice hardened. "You had no right. We have bills. We were counting on that money. We. Always we. Never me." For 5 years I had sent her money every month without fail. At first it was supposed to be temporary. She had just graduated, jobs were unstable, life was expensive. Then she married Daniel and suddenly the rent was higher, the car needed repairs, the credit cards were maxed out. There was always a reason. There was always an emergency. And there was always my bank account waiting to be emptied. I told myself this was what mothers did. I told myself love meant sacrifice. I told myself that one day she would look at me and see everything I had done for her. What I didn't realize was that over time, I stopped being her mother and became something else entirely. A solution. A safety net. A wallet. The moment I understood the truth didn't come during an argument. It came quietly through my phone screen. I found out about my own daughter's pregnancy through social media. A smiling photo, her hand resting on her belly, surrounded by her husband's family. Comments full of hearts and congratulations. People thanking God for their support system. I wasn't mentioned. I wasn't tagged. I wasn't even told. I sat alone at my kitchen table that night, staring at the screen until my eyes burned. That same table where I had balanced my checkbook month after month, making sure their life stayed comfortable. That was the first time I allowed myself to think something I had pushed away for years. Maybe I wasn't loved. Maybe I was useful. When I finally asked her about it, she sighed as if I were exhausting. "You're being dramatic, Mom. We've just been busy. You don't need to be involved in everything." Involved. I was involved enough to pay, but not involved enough to matter. That night, I opened my bank statements and did something I had avoided for years. I added everything up. Rent, utilities, groceries, furniture, wedding deposits, emergency transfers, loans that were never repaid. Over $100,000. Money from my retirement. Money my late husband had worked his whole life to leave me so I could live in peace. Something shifted inside me. It wasn't anger. It was clarity. The next month I didn't send the money. She called within hours. At first she laughed, thinking I was joking. When she realized I wasn't, her tone changed. "So what, you're just abandoning us now?" she said. "After everything?" "I'm choosing myself," I answered. There was a pause and then she said something I will never forget. "Well, what else are you even good for?" That sentence echoed in my head long after the call ended. It explained everything. My role. My value. My place in her life. Things escalated quickly after that. The calls became angry, then threatening, then cold. A week later, she showed up at my house with her husband and a lawyer I had never met. They sat at my dining table as if it belonged to them. The lawyer spoke gently, carefully, like someone delivering bad news. They were concerned about my mental state, he said. My recent behavior was worrying. Cutting off financial support. Installing security measures. Not answering calls. I realized then what was happening. This wasn't about my well-being. This was about control. About money. About access. I told them to leave. When they didn't, I repeated myself louder. The next morning, I sat in a lawyer's office for the first time in my life. When I told him everything, he didn't look surprised. "This is elder financial abuse," he said calmly. Hearing those words out loud made my hands shake. But it also made something else happen. I stopped doubting myself. We documented everything. We protected my accounts. We changed my will. And we prepared. My daughter didn't stop. She called social services. She told neighbors I was confused. She filed a petition to have me declared mentally incompetent. My own child tried to erase me legally so she could take what was left. When I stood in court and looked at her, I didn't recognize the person staring back. She cried and said she was worried. She said she loved me. She said she just wanted to help. When it was my turn to speak, I told the truth. I told them how love had turned into obligation, how generosity had become expectation, how I wasn't seen as a person anymore, only as a resource. I didn't shout. I didn't beg. I spoke clearly. I didn't lose my mind, I said. I found my spine. The judge denied the request. He said my decisions were rational. He said my finances were my own. He said the case was motivated by money, not concern. I won, but it didn't feel like victory. Felt like release. I sold my house a few months later. I moved somewhere smaller, brighter, quieter. I made friends who knew me for who I was, not what I could give. I traveled. I laughed. I slept without fear. I haven't heard from my daughter since. And that silence no longer hurts. Because now I understand something that took me most of my life to learn. Love that has a price is not love. And freedom is worth everything. If you were in my place, what would you have done?